I think it, the reading of that book, for me, kind of triggered, okay, this is what the coaches here do all the time, that you each hold those characteristics that a titillator or an innovator has. So it was just a matter of highlighting that and then trying to make that a focus for us for the year as coaches to build off of each other's strengths as well. There are some who have great empathy and others who could develop that skill, and then I think with Dee's help.
So having those 8 characteristics of a tiller-vator or a innovator mindset. I think we were also having the conversation about how can we drive forward. We're doing a lot of wonderful, great things. Last year, critical reading as a school-wide goal, and this year having it be writing. And what characteristics can we get our teachers excited about those things, and kind of as a goal for us so to be empathetic and problem finders.
In terms of technology, instructional strategies, new content. I mean, there were many different areas that we took risk on daily.
I think, the look at writing, that wasn't just a small hurdle, that was a cliff. We're asking teachers who have never taught writing to really go for it, and having that this was the group that was supposed to help support that fear and how to alleviate it.
And showing your team that you're vulnerable as well, and ready to take a risk and it not be perfect the first time, so they can go out and take those risks and be okay with it not being perfect every time you do try something new.
I think we modeled that really well last year as we had the critical reading as our goal. And so by giving that instruction and that PED to our teachers and having us go along the bumps and bruises along the way, now it's much easier to say, okay, we're going to tackle our next goal with writing, but because we're going to be doing it together in a supportive role, I think that helped, or will help alleviate some of the fear. It's when we develop those characteristics, that risk-taking, and we're all willing to do that, and I think modeling that for our teachers is very helpful, so then they can model that for their kids.
And there was buy-in with the data driving what our goal was going to be school-wide. There was a survey that was out to school-wide to all the teachers, and the teachers wanted to do that next step. They wanted the writing piece.
And I think too, the characteristics, I follow George Kuros on Twitter, and I saw it, and then Christine was reading the book, and then we did this whole thing on it. And so this tiller-vator, this tiller plus innovation or innovator is a tiller-vator. And how can we build that mindset along with those goals, that writing goal? And as for us to have Delia here to coach us on how to coach our teams, I think is tremendously, like, a really big part of this. But I think you're back to your question of which one stood out to me was resiliency, like being able to be resilient and take something and bounce back from a failed lesson or a failed technology use or writing in U.S. history, or just being resilient and not being afraid to jump back out there and try again.
I think they I don't know if you saw it in the Wee Busy last week, but the data from the first week of walkthroughs, right? Were you surprised on how, did I put in critical reading and writing, how much we saw of it, or it was Wicker? Critical reading, now writing, clearly we're not there yet because we haven't coached them through it or with it, but the critical reading, easily 80% of classrooms visited last week were doing some form of critical reading. It was amazing, very cool. So I think that you can see the power of the approach. How did today's PD go, or with your pods, or with your departments? Did you do department goal work, or?
Yes. Our department goal is continuing reinforcing those critical reading strategies, but now getting more depth. Like they asked for, today was PD on critical reading for vocab acquisition. But every time we give a PD, it's not just, we used the AVID strategy, the vocabulary awareness chart, and I walked them through what a level 1 would look like. And so I modeled the lesson for them, and then we had time to collaborate and talk about how would it look in different levels, and what technology can we incorporate when using this activity or this strategy, and then also what's the next step, which is writing. And we got to talking about, let's create a sentence frame and have that writing where, since our focus is already an essential question and it was based on a text, then the next writing would be answering that essential question using the 10 vocab words from that vocab awareness chart using the sentence frame in the target language at any level.
That's cool.
And so it was amazing. It was great, the feedback I've gotten already. They don't want to wait, because I used the unit 3 for level 1 samples. I wanted to use something that I felt my teachers could take back. And they're like, no, we're incorporating it next week. And so, yeah.
And what you just described, the lead facilitator today.
I was
the
the
right-
lead facilitator today
learner.
because we just started school 3 weeks ago. Nobody felt they were there yet to lead. But next one, we have a different department member leading, marking the text. The pre-planning is important in the critical reading, and I think everyone feels strong in that as teachers because of the PD from last year. It's just now starting to, best practices. Let's start sharing those best practices, plus the writing, incorporating the writing.
For English, you know, our goal this year was obviously the writing, but how to really use different forms of technology to support students in their writing endeavor. And Ryan and I pride ourselves on being good writing teachers, but we are not tech people. That's not our forte, our strong suit. So it was cool that it completely takes the responsibility of disseminating best PD and practices off of us. So we're excited, like, okay, when we do actively learn, he and I are not gonna be the ones that are presenting it. It's gonna be with the people that have the expertise in that and who has the expertise in Turin.com rubric. So the shared responsibility is really empowering for our department.
Now, how has that been a shift from the traditional chair role?
Night
Was
and
that there, that it was shared?
Minions.
Yes.
Minions with the group.
I think before the group saw us as the person that should have all the answers.
Right.
And we were more of disseminating information, not necessarily PD in any way. And now they understand that, oh, I may not know how to do something and I can learn from you as well. And it's that shared responsibility, which is night and day.
No, I've enjoyed having the opportunity to talk to you about possible resources. So English, Melissa and Joe looked at a new
Membi.
But in doing so, giving me the feedback and then thinking, okay, well, maybe that can help your vocabulary.
Yeah.
So
I just
is
found-
technology a piece that you added as something in your goals that you're setting, that you're also incorporating technology, because
So-
we're one to one?
Yeah, so we have a goal and every goal will have resources for possible technological tools.
Cool.
And also it'll have what's the next step, which will be the writing to support the school-wide goal.
It's great to hear kind of the journey of how these goals for this year have come to light, and just your journey in general in terms of transitioning from department chairs to instructional coaches. If you look up here, as we continue to sustain the iCoaching journey, and this is your year 2, walking you through this protocol of the here's what, so what, now what. And this is typically what you use when you're going to do a data dialogue. So you're asking teachers to take a look at the data with having put their assumptions on the table first, and then the so what. So you really interpret the data there in that section and allow them to make factual statements, and then the now what, which is like, so now that we've looked at it, we've processed it, so now what are we going to do with it? And really using your coaching skills to kind of be the facilitator in this process. And one of the greatest takeaways, I think, from last year was you don't have to know everything when you're walking your team through this protocol. Your job is to facilitate the process. So you don't have to be the master of data analysis. You don't have to know all of the answers. You do have to be comfortable with the facilitation of the process. So that's one of the other things as you're building capacity within your team and your skill set, is being okay with that you know, you're not gonna have all the answers when you get to that last column. Like, it's actually up to your team to tell you what they think about that data, and then what? So what are we gonna do with it? You're coaching them. And that's what you always want to remember in the process, is that your job is to coach them through the process, not tell them what to do or how to do it. Okay? So I think your greatest takeaways from this particular group from last year, if you could share those.
I really like the consultancy field and learning a lot about how you guys were all dealing with the conflict. And I especially appreciate that you always shared, you were always willing to share, like, okay, because you are very empathetic. Because you are very empathetic and you always come from assuming positive intentions. And so I feel that those were very helpful in learning from each other.
Me, it was adult learners are different than student learners. And so understanding the differences, and when you pointed that out, it became very obvious to me, but in communicating with adults is different than when you communicate with your students. And so learning, especially as a new coach, I think learning how to tackle adult learners and like better coach us through, I mean, it was huge that they're different and to treat them differently.
Right, great.
My big thing is building capacity. As a team, if we can build capacity, those big problems we have aren't so big anymore.
Yeah.
That they're much more easy to accomplish. To get over the problem, it's just a small problem, little bit.
Yeah, no, that's great, that's good to hear.
And conflict is okay. I fear conflict as a person. We had a whole discussion centered around that. Conflict is great, that's how you move forward, and I think that was another big takeaway.
Okay, I'm glad you're not like, I don't wanna do that,
Yeah.
and now you're like, okay, so how do I do it? And that's how your conversation has shifted.
Actually, embracing conflict is one I have right now, because I have a conflict to embrace. I'm thinking, how do I go about this? I've been just starting
Well,
to
we
think.
might have a consultancy trio here.
Yeah. I think for me, that's the biggest takeaway, is that we could come to this group if something was going on in our departments, knowing that I'm not alone, I'm not the only one that's having this frustration or problem, and then seeing it, how we're solving it within our own groups, but then that idea that building capacity, we have so much knowledge on this campus, and I think by us being instructional coaches, it's really helped us lift up other teachers that have expertise that have maybe been a little more quiet, and so I think we've really just raised the bar for everybody in terms of sharing and developing.
I think that the group has allowed us to keep the focus on student achievement and adult learning. I mean, we're not here talking about, you know, the trash in the quad today, or, you know, we're talking about what's important.
If you're leading and no one is following, you're just walking alone. And if you're talking and no one is thinking, you're just talking and you're not coaching.
It is.
Yeah.
The coaching mantras, don't forget, go slow to go fast. Student learning is at the core of what we do. Listen for the requests and the complaints. Assume positive intentions, and that's with students and teachers. Honor the speaker by effectively listening. You can tell a person is clever by their answers. You can tell whether a person is wise by their questions.
I know they are.
All right.